Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Rebel Religion in the News. Loneliness. I read an article that said that suicide rates among adults over 70 years old have increased by 40% since 2000. That's the kind of statistic that stops people cold, especially when you're our age, at least my age. I'm approaching 66, and wondering why that is. We're going to talk about that, the importance of not being lonesome. And in our society, it seems like loneliness is a problem, particularly with the older generation, and why that might be. I'm with Alfredo Romero of Rock of Life Fellowship and Bishop Peter Hansen of St. Augustine Anglican Church. Real off the top, Bishop, I know that you're past the age of 70.
Yeah.
Have you ever felt or know people in your age group that have had those feelings of maybe being disconnected from society because of the way society has changed over the years?
Well, I'm sure that's so. In fact, it's interesting to see the life of a pastor, of a Christian minister, who spends a lot of time alone. We are in an office with nobody there. I mean, we have those intense times. The joke about becoming a priest or minister is that you only have to work one day a week.
Hmm.
It's the day that people see you, Sunday. But the rest of the week, we are at work. We are just in a kind of an undefined space. We may fill our time with a lot of social engagements, maybe, but it's hard to do because people are already tasked. They've got their jobs, they've got their home life, they've got things scheduled, and they're not available. We've lost a sense of society. I really saw this happen and was concerned when the personal computer became a thing,
Hmm.
Okay.
and everybody had a relationship with the desktop,
Yeah.
and they didn't really get together again. We had more of a relationship with a computer, with a machine, than we had with other people.
I do want to mention very briefly, because anytime you mention the word suicide, you do need to point out there is a suicide hotline. If anybody's considering that, don't. The number is 988. But the group in the 70s, the article I'm reading states that this generation, in the generation that all three of us are really involved in, we prepared for a retirement that seems to no longer exist. Saved our money, raised our kids, worked our jobs, played by the rules, and assumed certain things would be waiting for us. We thought we'd have a close knit neighborhood, colleagues would become lifelong friends, children who lived nearby, churches and clubs that anchored our weeks. Instead, the way this article says, this generation got ghosted by an entire social system. And the workplace even became temporary, not terminal. The average length of a job or that somebody holds nowadays in their 20s, 30s, 40s, and 50s is either between 3 and 4 years. It's no longer you work for a company, you get a pension after 35, 40 years of working, and then you go off into retirement and enjoy traveling. That doesn't; those days don't seem to exist for many people. Not necessarily for you, Bishop. Maybe I don't know. You seem to have a great network of friends, but for a lot of people, that's not the case.
Well, I count the two of you my only good friends.
God bless you. Yeah, the only time I'm with people is this morning. I look, there's a lot to this, and I think you pretty much nailed it on the head when you talked about everybody says, well, back in my day in the 50s, in the 40s, 60s, 70s, 80s. But I think the real, and any generation has a right to say, hey, it was different in my days. That's true. I think the real changer on this was, like you said, it was the computer, it was the internet. I think it's like we should start saying, well, before the internet, we used to do this and that because the
Yeah.
internet changed everything. You didn't have to go outside. You could play golf on a game. You could play solitaire alone on a computer. Unfortunately, computers used for horrible things,
Yeah.
pornography, things we shouldn't be reading, evil, all this stuff. And see, I work with kids a lot. I used to be a president, pastor, and a worship leader for a high school, junior high. And I'm telling you, the amount of social anxiety among the youth is insane.
But I think the fragmentation actually started weaving its way into our lives even a little sooner than that. I remember when cable came out, And then suddenly you had more options to watch different television shows. So
Yeah.
you're like, I'm going to watch ESPN, I'm going to watch CNN, I'm going to watch TBS, I'm going to watch the Country Channel. And suddenly that, to me, that's where the fragmentation really started.
Sure.
And then it grew even more so when you got into the internet. Other than the Super Bowl, I don't think there is an event, a show where everybody is watching the same program for 3 hours or 4 hours at any other time during the year.
Yeah, I think you could still blame it on the internet though, because it was the advent of like HBO and Cinemax and Showtime, because suddenly you did have all these channels, but that was because of the internet. You can now have more channels than 2, 4, 5, 11, 13, 7, 11, 13. But think about this. I remember when I was a kid, when like the final show of MASH, you knew everybody in the country was going to gather around and watch MASH. Everybody was going to gather around and watch All in the Family, and and then you talked about it the next day. It's hard to do that now. Hey, have you streamed this show? No, I haven't
Yeah.
streamed it yet. I'm only on season 1. So
Yeah.
we've lost that gathering of community because I believe because of the internet. And now you've got these young people focused on AI. You can have an AI girlfriend, an AI boyfriend, an AI best friend, somebody that talks to you. I've got people that I know that are in that youngish age, and they're glued to that TV. They don't even go out. No friends, nothing. They're in their rooms all the time to play games and internet and talk and chat. And you
Let
don't
me
need to go outside.
let me throw a curveball here. Is the church somewhat responsible itself? We have, you don't like this denomination, go to that denomination. You don't agree with them on that scripture, go to that church. Well, the church, the Christian church, has done the same thing. We go, well, they're not Christian. They don't believe the way I believe. They're not Christian because they take the sacrament in a different way. They believe in infant baptism. No, 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 no. Can't have infant baptism. It must be believer baptism. And there's so much divergence even within the Christian community. And so I'm wondering if the church is partially to blame as well, as instead of just focusing on what we all agree on, that salvation comes through the death, burial, and resurrection of Jesus Christ. And we get into these details that I find frustrating as a Christian myself when the church has been split apart with so many denominations. There's my sermon, my speech. I'll leave it out there and see if there's anything to that in your opinion.
I like it. The word, the German word Zeitgeist, which is the spirit of an age. It's been said that I think very accurately that any church that is married to the spirit of the age will be a widow in the next one.
Hmm,
Uh,
good.
we have bought into a commercialism where the idea is to get enough people inside the doors and keep their fannies in the seats long enough so that they become stuck to you, and that's called salvation. And we got so many numbers of salvations because we have so many attendees, and you end up catering to them in a sort of a commercial entertainment. And if you go to that, if that's basically the thrust of your ministry, you may have a very successful looking thing, but you haven't really you haven't created a community.
Hmm.
They're there for, it's like going to a TV show or a movie.
Hmm.
You don't have a relationship there. You just been given some time. You'll call it being fed,
Yeah.
but it's just tapping your toes.
But there's no way at this point to get the Anglicans and the Lutherans and the Catholics and the Baptists and the Episcopalians and the Methodists to
non-denominationals.
get together and say, you know what, we're all one. I don't think that's ever going. I mean, sometimes it happens. I saw that happen with in Chico when Charlie Kirk was assassinated, and they had a big event over in I believe it was DeGarmo Park, and there were about 1,000 people
Right,
there.
right, we're there.
And yes, and it was a wonderful connection because people from all denominations got together, and they all spoke about Jesus Christ. But it takes somebody to be assassinated
Yeah,
for the churches to get together and say, you know what, we're all on the same side.
Yeah.
And it's discouraging to me sometimes, even when I do the show and we talk about theological issues, and I think maybe sometimes people who are listening or people who are out, or people who are outside the church are confused because of all of the different brands of Christianity.
I think we've taken our eye off the whole focus on the gospel. Like you said, I could just tell you from experience. I mean, I've had people leave churches because the music was too loud, the music was too soft, it wasn't the old hymns, it was too contemporary. I've had people leave the church. Nowadays, somebody left our church recently because of the disagreement on replacement theory and covenant theory. Is Israel still the pure Israel that God would bless? And he agreed 99% of it. But no, you guys don't talk about that. So therefore, I'm going to leave, find another church, and they'll leave because either it's too cold in there, it's too hot in there. You just can't please everybody. We've become so nitpicky that we've taken our focus off Jesus and the whole point of going to church. It is a community. And I tell people all the time, going to church on Sunday is a supplement to your relationship with Christ Monday through Saturday. You don't depend on just Sunday to build your relationship with Christ.
Right.
Building your relationship with Christ happens after you leave church. So,
Yeah, you're very right. Um, I just had a thought and it just got driven out of my head. Sorry. Um,
No, I'll pick it up.
Pick it up.
I want to kind of center back too, as well as, well, here's what I was thinking about. I know churches, and I go to churches, and I know your churches do it as well, Pastor Alfredo, where there's coffee and donuts and treats
Sure.
as you come in and as you leave, and that has also become sort of a focus. Like, we're gonna have donuts. You got to have donuts. It's like when you go to work, it's like, well, there's a birthday. We've got to have a birthday cake. Everybody's got to be singing. There's got to be donuts in the break room. And it does seem like I do get concerned that the socializing becomes greater than the worship. However, the socializing is important. I do want to talk about that again because we are talking about loneliness, particularly with a certain generation. So I do want to get back to that.
Yeah, we'll do the flip side on what you're saying. Too.
Yeah, we'll take a break. We'll be right back. A couple of years ago, I was at my son's graduation at Arizona State University, and the commencement address speaker was Dr. Vivek Murthy. He served as the 21st Surgeon General under President Biden. And he gave a magnificent address. I hung on every word. And he talked about the declaring that loneliness and isolation a public health epidemic. And that does sound really jarring. Come on. Loneliness is a public health epidemic. To some people, it sounds maybe that's over the top. But he highlighted the lacking social connection carries risks for premature death comparable to daily smoking, affecting mental, physical, and societal health. And that kind of dovetails into what we first started the show with, which was that 40%, there's been a 40% increase in suicides for people 70 years and older. Loneliness, is it overstating it to say that it's an epidemic, that loneliness is an epidemic? Is that going too far?
Not at all. Mental health issues is the largest growing segment of all the medical world. So this is part of this. Is the darkness and the troubled mind and the isolation. It's terrible. The thing I was going to say in the last segment was that we tend to want to look, if we're seeking for the church to be the answer, and then we make all these requirements on the church to match me. It's got to match all my little markers, and every one of my little pins have to be set the same way, or else they won't open the garage door. It's wrong. You should not go to a church that fits you. You should go to a church where you're directed by God, even if it's a complete misfit, because obviously you need work.
Yes.
Yeah. You need to change. You need to adjust to something that is not you.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%. I do have people, you probably do too, all pastors do, I believe. Correct me if I'm wrong, pastors. But every Sunday, just about every Sunday, I have people coming up going, you should have went a little longer. You should have went a little shorter. Why don't you ever talk about this in the Bible? Why don't you ever talk about that in the Bible? You talk about this too much. There are people that have come into the church at times, not large, but there's a small percentage of them that do try to like adjust the style of the church that God has given us and the approach
Yeah.
because it's nothing that they were used to. My other church used to do this. Why don't you guys do this more often? And it's like they're trying to shift the church. And by the way, there's a reason for the coffee and the donuts. All that sugar and caffeine, it keeps people awake during the sermon.
You
So
want that.
there's a strategy there.
That's a good
There
idea.
you go.
I remember my father. He had a magnificent voice, and he loved to sing the Lutheran hymns at the Missouri Synod Church. It was called Peace Lutheran Church in Pomona, California, and he would go. And he would complain to the pastor because he wanted only the hymns that were the greatest hits. How great thou art, beautiful Savior.
Rugged cross.
The ones that the greatest hits. And then what?
Amazing Grace.
But the pastor, Pastor Troms, would put in some of the avant-garde, the deep cuts,
Yeah.
and it was like
The
my
flip
dad
side.
would my dad would get my dad he says I don't want to hear the B side. I want to let's hear the good stuff. And so I understand what it's like because my father was one of those who would complain all the time, not all the time, but he'd be like he'd mumble to my mother, I can't. Why don't they play one of the good songs, And so I understand it. People, you cannot please everybody all the time, and I guess you just have to
Don't
accept
try.
that.
Don't try.
Don't
No.
try.
No.
No, he's right. You can't try. I had somebody recently upset because, and I won't name names, but we get various complaints. One of them was we're a very family-oriented church, right? It's a lot of kids, a lot of youth, a lot of, and wonderful, people that are seniors that are just so ingrained in the Lord. So it's just a mixture. And I had some gentlemen saying, there's a lot of kids in here. When I church I grew up to, there wasn't a lot of kids. They're really distracting during worship. But as soon as worship is over, they go to their ministry rooms, right, with the different age groups. It's usually just the younger people and the adults. But now they're complaining about children because they're dancing in the aisles or they're singing or
Well,
they.
I'm okay with that, but it's the crying of the babies that can be a distraction.
Yeah, we don't have that.
That
That's
is a
good.
problem.
We have a baby cry room. It's
Yes,
okay.
that's important.
That's okay.
I want to touch real quickly again before we end the show the 2023 advisory by Dr. Vivek Murthy. He outlined that roughly 1 in 2 adults in the United States reported measurable levels of loneliness, health impact. He emphasized that loneliness increases risks for cardiovascular disease, dementia, stroke, depression, and anxiety. Proposed solutions: strengthening social infrastructure, fostering in-person connection, and reducing reliance on social media to fill social voids. I don't know what you think of the Biden administration, but this guy was right on topic.
Yeah. He's
Yeah.
onto something.
Yeah.
We need to put our cell phones in our pockets and not take them out unless we get a phone call or a message that's important.
Right.
We are too easily set into silos of individual entertainment, or we feel responsible to answer every single silly text that comes back
That's my
to
mom.
us. Yeah.
I called you 5 minutes ago. You didn't pick up. What's going on? Are you okay? I'm fine, Mom. I was in the restroom.
What could the church do? I mean, the churches that I go to, every church that that I know of, and I'm very familiar with 4 of them, all have social occasions before, usually after church, sometimes before church, in between services. That's all you can really do, and then invite people to come be a part of it.
We've got our chili cook-off coming,
Oh, do you?
March 22nd.
Oh, nice.
It's always the Sunday closest to the spring equinox.
Uh-huh.
I call it the thaw, and it's a chili cook-off. So we get the hot chili to warm our little bones on the.
Do you make a
Turning in
point of
spring.
trying to reach out to those who are older? Because and when you're in the pulpit, do you look and say, this person maybe needs a friend. This person maybe needs some human contact. You ever notice that, Bishop, when you're in the pulpit and you see somebody out there? Because your church is relatively small in size.
Yeah.
You could pretty much get a good look at how people are thinking or feeling.
Sure. I mean, that's the nuances of ministry. When you know and you sense something is a little off with someone, you need to reach out to them.
Yeah.
And make a special point of contact, make a coffee date or something. It's not all on the pastor, though. I mean, the Christian world is mostly not pastors, and they all need to be. We all have a ministry, however.
Yes.
We are ministers ordained by the Holy Spirit to offer the gifts that He gives each of us for the sake of the body. That's a lot what's lost in an entertainment-oriented church,
Yeah.
where the idea is to have them glued to you, your personality, the entertainment, the worship team, and you're not getting people empowered to go out and do the ministry that God's given them, which may just be a hospitality gift, but it's a very important one.
The people need to understand that there is a community in a church. One of the points of the article that we had read earlier was that we've lost the sense of community. And people used to have community in church. You'd have your chili cook-offs, and you'd have your game night or worship night or something. And our church is understanding of that. We know that there's different generations, but we love to blend those generations. We have just enough events. We have like a person that's more experienced, more mature. We have a Bible study, and we have a youth Bible study, men's Bible studies, women's Bible studies. But we also have more events where we gather everyone at the same time. The people that are more experienced, more mature, older, we try to set them up with younger people to mentor and to help them along some of the new believers. You got to have enough events, but we're not event driven. We're gospel driven.
I probably shouldn't confess this, but I will nonetheless. I have neighbors that I've known in our block since we moved there in 2014. That's nearly 12 years ago. Some of them I still have a hard time remembering their names, but I remember the names of every neighbor that I had when I was 10 years old living in Diamond Bar, California. Oh, Shirley lives next door.
too.
Rita lives up the road. Oh, that's Harley and there is Jean Dido and Marge Dido, and next door the Martini. I remember them all.
Yeah.
But we socialized together. We'd have barbecues together. We'd have parties together. They'd had New Year's Eve parties together. We'd have block parties together on July 4th where we'd
Yeah.
light fireworks.
Yeah.
It's a sad commentary. Maybe it's just me. I'm wondering if other people have that same type of trouble even remembering who their own neighbors are in their neighborhood.
I guess Diamond Bar was a little behind the times, still back in the Happy Days deals.
Yeah.
Because I was noticing when I was a kid, the effect of the car in Los Angeles area. Because you get in your car, in your garage, back it out, have the door come down, and you're in your car getting to work, and you get into another garage, and you get into the workplace, and then you get back into the car, and you drive to the home, and you shut the door. And I thought, isn't it weird? We live in these little conveyances, and we're not seeing others. We resent all the people on the freeway who are in my way.
Yeah.
And the people who are on the block who are making noise.
Yeah.
And the kids who are running in the street. And
Yeah, it's 7 a.m. They got the blowers going on. Saturday's the only day they can sleep.
I think if we have about 30 seconds left in the show, I think if we're looking for a goal, maybe think about maybe trying to find somebody who doesn't have somebody or needs a friend.
Yeah.
And it shouldn't be a stranger, but it should be maybe even a neighbor. Make a point of going to knock on the door and saying hi and, finding out what their name is.
That would be
because
good.
that would be a nice start. And I wish we had more time. This is such a good topic. Again, there is a suicide hotline number. If anybody is feeling lonely or depressed, there's 988 is the suicide hotline number. But even better than that, go to a church.
Yeah, you've got our numbers on the bottom of the thing.
right.
Either call Bishop's Church or my church. We have a community of family. We'd love to have you join us.
Take good care, everybody. So long.